And while Trump had no answers today as to what he plans to do about systemic racism and police abuse, some Democratic members of Congress are stepping forward with an actual plan. A group of Democratic House members led by the Congressional Black Caucus are set to release a new bill of police reforms when they return next week. And joining us now is Representative Karen Bass, chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, who's helping spearhead that package of reforms. Congresswoman Bass, I cannot have you on without allowing you to comment on Donald Trump invoking the name of George Floyd to pretend the economy at 13% unemployment is. Great. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, I mean, the thoughts are awful. I mean, George Floyd's family laid him to rest yesterday. The grief in Minneapolis, and that's what he has to say about it. We know that he is absolutely incapable of feeling empathy, and to see such an embarrassing, ignorant display of it was just shameful. But he also, I mean, he's not moved by the fact that he lost 100,000 Americans, so what's the surprise?
Yeah. Fair point. Firm but fair. Firm but fair. This is the political report on the bill that you, Madam Congresswoman, are working on. And it says a bill from Democratic House Chairman Hakeem Jeffries that would ban the use of chokeholds by police, even as most large police departments have restricted the practice. The proposal was one of the few areas of disagreement in a lengthy call on Wednesday with CBC Chairwoman Karen Bass and the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus, according to a source on the call. What was the disagreement about, if I might say?
Well, actually, I'm not sure. That's not how I would characterize that call at all. First of all, when I did the call, we didn't have the actual bill. We were just talking concepts, and I actually found a lot of support on both sides of the aisle. As you know, that's 50% Democrat, 50% Republican, so I'm not sure what disagreement they're talking about.
So can you just lay out what would be in the bill if this bill becomes law? What would change?
Sure. Absolutely. Well, first of all, the Congressional Black Caucus and the leadership will introduce the bill, the identical bill, in the House and the Senate on Monday. And basically, the bill addresses the challenges that we all have in holding police accountable. You can't fire them, you can't sue them, you can't prosecute them. So there are very specific provisions that we're proposing. So, for example, qualified immunity is something that applies to police officers, which means that you basically can never sue them. There needs to be a national database. So when there is a bad officer, that bad officer can't just leave and go to another area. You remember the officer that killed Tamir Rice had been fired shortly before that. Racial profiling, you mentioned the chokehold, no-knock warrant should be ended. That's what happened to Breonna Taylor, the militarization of the police. So it has several different aspects, but I would say the center of it, and we're calling it, by the way, the Justice and Policing Act, the center of it is accountability and transparency. And so we think it's a landmark legislation. We're going to work very hard to unite our caucus and to reach out to Republicans. And back to that call, I found out that two of my Republican colleagues, one was a former police officer, the other one's son is a current police officer, and they both talked about how they were horrified at what happened to George Floyd. But the way we're framing it also is no profession wants to have a bad apple bring the name of the profession down. You as a journalist, a teacher, a doctor, a lawyer, nobody wants to have bad apples. And so we want the police departments to be able to get rid of them. And we also want to make sure that they don't go and serve as a police officer in another area. So we want to build support for this. We think this is a critical bill, and we do believe that it will turn the curve. It doesn't solve everything, but we do believe that it will make a very significant difference.
And is there, at this point, I don't know if you're at the stage yet where you know whether or not in the other building, are there Republicans willing, you only need 3 of them to sign on to get it past Mitch McConnell. Any thoughts on whether or not there will be enough Republicans to make this get through the Senate?
Well, you know, I'm certainly hopeful. Of course, in the Senate, we have our 2 CBC members, Senator Booker and Senator Harris, and they are taking the lead on it in the Senate. And we were moving quickly because the momentum is there. And I know in talking to both of the senators, they're very hopeful, one, that they can unite their caucus, but also that they will be able to get some Republican support. And for us to introduce identical bills, I think that gives us a very good head start. So I'm looking forward to going back on Monday, having the press conference. On Wednesday, we're having a hearing in Judiciary. And then on Thursday, it's going to be CBC Day on the Hill, we're going to have our own briefing where we're going to talk to members from the community, some people that were involved in protests. And then, you know, it's also an opportunity, and there is a provision in the bill to provide grants to community-based organizations to begin to re-envision public safety. What type of policing would we like to see in our community? I represent a district that one side is very affluent, and the police deal with that side completely different than they do South Central Los Angeles, which is also in my district.
Congresswoman Karen Bass, chairwoman of the Congressional Black Caucus, thank you very much for illuminating that information on the bill, and we'll be checking that out next week.
Good.
Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.